All right, we're doing it live. Hey, Bounding into Comics. My name is Stephen Kent. I'm a new addition here to the Bounding into Comics family. Going to be writing for the site, contributing to the channel about Star Wars, a galaxy far, far away, past, present, and future, the good, the bad, the ugly. My deal is pretty simple. I love Star Wars. I love talking about it. I got to know some of the folks in the Bounding into Comics community through my book that I wrote, How the Force Can Fix the World. My day-to-day is that I'm a political commentator and entertainment writer, so I contribute to the Washington Examiner, the Blaze, sometimes USA Today, and now Bounding into Comics on what's going on in the world of entertainment movies with a focus on Disney and Lucasfilm. That's kind of the heart of my fandom and my commitment to nerd culture. So if I'm on here, it's probably going to have something to do with Star Wars. I happen to believe that one of the best ways to get to know a Star Wars fan, because fans do this with each other all the time, is to rank the Star Wars movies. Talk about your favorite, least favorite, what's trash, what's not. And over at Bounding into Comics, you'll actually find an article that I wrote about Ben Shapiro of the Daily Wire. Did a video with Critical Drinker, the YouTuber and film critic, ranking the Star Wars movies for 2023. So this is Skytalker. Bah! Skytalker. That's what we came up with. It's probably taken by somebody else, but for today, it's ours. We'll see how it goes. I really hope that y'all like these streams, like these segments that we're going to do focused on Star Wars, again, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So let's pull up here the article, which is over at Bounding right now, so that y'all can see what it is that we're talking about here today. Ben Shapiro and Critical Drinker reveal their Star Wars film rankings for 2023. Now, Shapiro has done this numerous times. He's a big Star Wars fan. He knows his stuff from Thrawn to Mara Jade to the Yun Sung Bong to Darth Plagueis, Bane, all that kind of stuff. He can name drop the right things to get by in a Star Wars conversation. So I've seen his rankings on Twitter many times. So this is actually a little bit different than some of his rankings in the past. So I'm going to go through Drinker's rankings, Shapiro's rankings, and then offer you a little bit of my own. So I think the first place to start is Ben's rankings and where they align with Critical Drinker. So like I said here, like you can learn a lot from people about their Star Wars rankings, and Ben starts off with the predictable. The Empire Strikes Back. Maybe it's predictable for a good reason. The Empire Strikes Back is great and timeless and good. They both cite it at the top of their list as being number one, just because it's that classic movie. The pacing is right. The dark themes are done in an effective way. So in the video where Shapiro and Critical Drinker are reviewing this movie, they don't really go into their reasons. They just sort of state it as fact. Now, number two for both of them is A New Hope, which again, understandable. A lot of times, at least in my experience with Star Wars fans, it's Empire or A New Hope. And that sort of reflects whether or not they prefer sort of the darker, grittier aspects of Empire, or just the fact that A New Hope is the most pure Star Wars movie that there could possibly be. The divisions actually start between them in the third slot, which is Rogue One. Ben Shapiro kind of notes that on any given day that your movies change preferences, that there are some days where he really, really likes Revenge of the Sith, that last act of the movie is just perfect distilled Star Wars, but that the first half of Revenge of the Sith lags a little bit. And there are days where he just really wants to go all in on Return of the Jedi, but that Rogue One is the most redeemable Disney venture, that it gets everything about the Imperial Rebel conflict right, and it just looks good. It's a good piece of content. So I'll actually play this video that I made responding to that, and talk a little bit about why I think Rogue One is typically actually really high up there with a lot of classic loyal Star Wars fans. Ben Shapiro has given his 3 top Star Wars movies. Of course, The Empire Strikes Back in number 1, followed by Episode 4, A New Hope, but a curious number 3, not The Return of the Jedi, but Rogue One.
Rogue One is a good piece of content in place number 3.
Interesting.
I think this is actually a great selection for this reason. If you had to ask me, where should someone start Star Wars if they've never seen a single Star Wars movie, Rogue One is my answer. It's the one I always give. It's because it's a distinctly modern Star Wars movie. It has the look and the feel of what contemporary audiences expect from action movies, fantasy, adventure. Rogue One accomplishes this perfectly. It's a wonderful summation of the rebel versus imperial conflict. It gives you a little bit of backdrop about the world before the rise of the Empire. And if you find yourself caught up in this story about getting the Death Star plan so that they can take out this planet-killing weapon, then you will want to know what comes next. You will want to watch the original Star Wars movie, 1977, A New Hope, to see what happens. And I think someone who's never been exposed to Star Wars before will then make more allowances for the really slow pacing and rudimentary special effects of Star Wars. Timeless as it may be, Rogue One is a perfect primer for a brand new Star Wars fan. And it's a wonderful pick for number 3. But Ben Shapiro is still wrong because Return of the Jedi is the best Star Wars movie. Yeah, so I stand by every word of that. And I guess that does reveal what my favorite Star Wars movie is, but I will explain later. Rogue One, that lands higher on the list for Ben Shapiro. I think that's a generational thing in part, kind of like with Revenge of the Sith landing as Ben Shapiro's number 5. It's just, some of these newer movies, their modern shine, I think makes a big difference to fans under the age of 40, particularly with Revenge of the Sith landing as his number 5. I resonate with that. Revenge of the Sith is very high up on my rankings, which I will tell you later, because I have memories of going to the theaters with my best friends to see that movie. I remember very clearly opening night, the lightsabers, wore Jedi robes, like all that kind of stuff. It was a special Star Wars memory. And so even if the movie is not perfect and there are elements of it I can't stand, the movie just has it's the power of nostalgia. It sort of overwhelms reason and criticism at a certain point. Revenge of the Sith goes high up on his list because, again, like the Order 66 sequence in the Fall of the Jedi Order, it's just great. It's just really good. So after that, he's got number 6, Attack of the Clones. I don't like this movie. I don't like episode 2. I find it to be sluggish. It drags. It's a little bit long, and the performances are rough. And I don't like to join in the choir of George Lucas can't write, but a lot of his actors said things along the lines of, you can write that, George, but you can't say it. And just a lot of what goes on in episode 2, from, the stroking of Padme's back on the lake in Naboo, to their really tortured scene by the fire about why they should not be together. I find this movie to be tough. I don't watch it very often. So that lands at number 6 for Ben Shapiro. That also is where Critical Drinker lands on Attack of the Clones. Then you have Solo. Solo is a good movie. Solo is a perfectly good movie. Alden as Han Solo did so much better than he should have done. Like, it should have been impossible to be Han Solo in the shadow of Harrison Ford, but he did it. He actually managed to do it. I found him to be great. Donald Glover as Lando was fantastic. There are elements of that movie that work. There are elements of it that don't, like Darth Maul coming in at the end and kind of building on what we know from the Clone Wars animated series, that he gets involved in the criminal underworld. Was weird, but I don't know, weird but cool. But at the same time, I understand why, if you were like a mainstream member of the audience, the Star Wars audience, who goes to a theater and then you see Solo and Darth Maul is alive, I'd be very confused. That would just be such a strange choice. So Solo is good, though. I really do like it. The thing that I do say about Solo often, though, is that it's a if there is a Star Wars movie that no one asked for, that no one asked to be made, it is probably Solo. It's because Harrison Ford is beloved. Han Solo is beloved. Nobody wants another Han while Harrison Ford is still with us, while he's still available. It's part of why, The Force Awakens, killing him was so sacrosanct. I mean, this is our space dad, and I was not ready for him to be recast as a younger version of himself. I just don't think that it served a huge purpose. All right, so let's carry on with Ben's rankings. At number 80 is The Phantom Menace. Doesn't really say much about it. I think this is a pretty average placement for The Phantom Menace. He argues that it isn't as bad as people say, that it's a really nicely done movie. I completely agree with that. I'll offer my defense of it later. And this is one that The Rise of Skywalker. So after you get through all these movies, you now have to rank the sequel trilogy, which I think rightly belong at the back of the list. The Rise of Skywalker, his defense of it is that J.J. Abrams, following Rian Johnson in The Last Jedi, that there was only really so much that could be done there, that he had to salvage a plot line, and that the movie is like a nostalgia-packed joy fest. It was weird. It was after the movie came out, Ben Shapiro did tweet a response to it. He said that just saw Rise of Skywalker. Everyone is wrong. The movie is mostly nostalgia-packed joy. If you love the original Star Wars, you should be grateful to J.J. Abrams for attempting to right his own wrongs in The Force Awakens and the travesty that is The Last Jedi. I don't give him any credit for anything that went on in that movie. Nostalgia-packed joy. Emperor Palpatine on the throne of the Sith. Nostalgia-packed joy. Like really ham-handed Lando Calrissian cameo midway through with no clear purpose. No, that just seems wrong. The Force Awakens, number 10. I think not much to say there. I don't hate The Force Awakens. It's like a good start. It was a lazy movie in that it, mimicked so many of the beats of the original trilogy. It was like not just A New Hope redone in one single movie. It was like all of the elements of all three original movies packed into one movie to jumpstart a new trilogy. But there were just so many original sins in that movie, including the death of Han Solo, the dissolution of Leia and Han's marriage, and then the fact that Luke is not introduced until the end of the movie, and that we never get the original cast reunited in any meaningful way. The Force Awakens has a lot against it, but there are some things in its favor, which, as you get to know me on the Bounding Into Comics channel, I have some positive opinions about it as well, which I think I can I can defend. The Last Jedi is at the bottom of the barrel for both Ben and Critical Drinker. These are Critical Drinkers listings that you can see here. They're more or less the same. Rise of Skywalker and Force Awakens taking different places. Rogue One, Attack of the Clones, those things taking different places in each of their lists. It was a good video. I encourage anybody to watch it. I think it's fun to watch Critical Drinker and Ben talk about this. Ben has a lot to say about Star Wars, which is fun. I mean, he again riffs a little bit about why The Force Awakens just was kind of irredeemable, like that it couldn't possibly work because of their decision to move on from the expanded universe, toss out the EU, and not begin with the stories that they had available to them. So, leaning on Timothy Zahn's Thrawn books, utilizing Luke and Mara Jade, and then breaking up Han Solo and Leia. Like there was source material that would have been a better place to start than this just truly bizarre First Order versus Resistance plot line that they've cooked up at Disney Lucasfilm. It didn't have to be this way. So with that being said, I'm going to give you my rankings. So this will be fun. So you'll love them or hate them. I don't aim to be a contrarian when I share my rankings, but they are what they are, you know? Your favorite Star Wars movies are not based in logic. I think it's very much like a matter of the heart, which ones are your favorite. And I will also say, Star Wars fans tend to, I think, get a little bit confused when they're debating or listing their best movies, because sometimes best movie and favorite movie are not the same thing. You know, Empire Strikes Back is like a perfectly made movie. It's like a perfect 1980s action adventure fantasy Star Wars movie. It's paced so well. Everything about it is beautiful. The special effects, the drama, the dialogue, the acting. I don't know. I think you could convince me to say that it is the best Star Wars movie, but it's just not my favorite. When I make a list, it's not number one. It's not even number two. So I will share my list with you right now. Okay, Star Wars rankings. Rank one and rank number two. Return of the Jedi. Return of the Jedi, Revenge of the Sith. I love Return of the Jedi. I don't know why. It's for I love Return of the Jedi. I have reasons why. It's the ending of the movie that just does it for me. The resolution of Luke and Vader, Vader's redemption, overthrowing the Emperor, sacrificing himself, Luke burning him on a pyre, the Ewok celebration, the victory. Like, I love the celebratory aspect of Return of the Jedi. It's a beautiful movie. It's fun. I'll admit, like, sort of like with the first half of Revenge of the Sith, I don't love it. I don't love Jabba's palace that much. Uh, but it's just fun world building stuff. It's just like Mandalorian content. You get to see a part of Star Wars that is different than what like the hero plot lines I think are focused on. So Return of the Jedi is just my happy place. So I watch that one a lot. It's one I watch the most. Number two for me is Revenge of the Sith. Again, this is heart, not reason or logic. I'm a prequels kid. I am 33 years old. I was born in 1999. I'm sorry, 89. And I saw Attack of the Clones in theaters. I know I saw episode one in theaters, but I don't have like strong memories of going. I know I went with my parents. I was supervised and chaperoned. It was a family thing, but my parents weren't big fans. They were just there to like keep an eye on me while we watched the movie. And so it just wasn't super special, and the memory just barely stuck. But I have powerful emotional memories about seeing Revenge of the Sith with my best friends and my brother. We made costumes, lightsabers, and went to opening day. Stood in line for 8 hours after getting out of school early. On content, I love Ewan McGregor, Obi-Wan. I love Christensen as Anakin. I grew up in high school. I grew out my hair down to my shoulders to mimic Hayden Christensen and his locks, his curls. So I did that myself. I was a prequel kid through and through. I love those movies, and Revenge of the Sith is just highly satisfying. Order 66, Mustafar, punishing Padme for her betrayal. I kid. Um, yeah, it's for me, it's number two, and it is for George Lucas. Like, it really is a triumph. That movie is a triumph in everything that they cover in such a short amount of time with incredibly high stakes. It looks good. It is a believable movie. Whereas Attack of the Clones, I think, actually suffered from a little bit of the mid 2000s special effects craze, that George Lucas kind of kicked off, but it was kind of in like a period of awkwardness, I think, special effects. And Attack of the Clones just doesn't look right. There's something about it that's weird. And Revenge gets it right. So episode 3 is my number 2. I stand by it, which brings me to Empire Strikes Back. Empire Strikes Back is not number 3 out of malice. There's really no reason it shouldn't be number 1. It's just not my number 1. It's not my main squeeze. That's okay. Nothing against it. Love that movie. All right. A New Hope. A New Hope is my number 4. Same thing. It's It's cinema. It is cinema. It is not content. Where some of the Star Wars shows, I think the Kenobi series on Disney is content. A New Hope is cinema. It's a beautiful movie, and I love it. But it's number 4. I don't watch it that often. I watch Return of the Jedi, Revenge of the Sith a lot. Phantom Menace is my number 5. This movie gets the balance between old and new perfectly. For 1999, it's the best of both worlds, with practical effects of the 80s and 90s Hollywood, with the emerging special effects technology that is going to define most of the prequel trilogy. This movie just has everything you need, from Master Yoda actually being a puppet before the re-release editions, to believable sets around Tatooine and Coruscant, and then certain elements of Naboo. But then the special effects really come through where they count. I know Jar Jar. I know Jar Jar. Okay, but I just don't care. Jar Jar is annoying, but I just don't care. Maybe it's I'm a parent, and maybe it's just because you get good at like ignoring crap that you don't like at a certain point. Loud noises, squeaky things, fish people talking in oddly constructed sentences. I just don't care. Phantom Menace is fun, and I'm here for Qui-Gon Jinn. Qui-Gon Jinn is my favorite Star Wars character, by the way. Green lightsaber, wise, stoic, Liam Neeson. So the fact that Qui-Gon Jinn is in this movie, dies a really awesome death, honorable. Phantom Menace just does it for me. Rogue One is my number 6. Just lands differently than where Ben Shapiro and Critical Drinker have it. It is the best Disney Star Wars. It remains to me the evidence that they can do this. Guys, you can do this. You proved it. You proved with Rogue One. And I would also argue, like, a lot of what is in Solo, that you know how to make a Star Wars movie. I think the trouble just comes in with not legacy characters, but legacy, well, the dynamics between a lot of your original characters, the kind of the sacred nature of Han, Leia, and Luke. It's those things that are just, it's just really hard to tell stories in the shadow of those dynamics for Star Wars fans. Rogue One breaks away and tells a perfect Star Wars story where it could be told without rubbing anybody the wrong way or disrupting headcanon and all that kind of stuff. So Solo, I have it as 7 because it is better than all of the sequel trilogy movies. First of all, I also just enjoy the underground criminal aspect of Solo. So focusing on the underworld and the gangs, Han Solo's origin story, even though the Solo last name is cheesy, but him and Chewie in that movie are great. And again, Lando Calrissian, perfect. The SJW droid, I can't remember the droid's name. Again, kind of like Jar Jar territory, didn't bother me. The idea of like droid liberation, and that there are droids in the Star Wars galaxy who believe that they are enslaved, which they are, restraining bolts. That the idea that there would be sort of a liberationist droid kind of makes sense to me. Of course there would be. But the language that the droid uses, the way it talked, being voiced by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, just, I get why it rubbed people the wrong way. You kind of get what's going on there behind the scenes with the politics of Disney and Lucasfilm. It was also coming out at a time where race and social justice in America is just like at a fever pitch, and bad timing. But that being said, droid liberation, not a crazy concept. It makes sense. The Force Awakens is my number 8. Special memory. This is my first Star Wars movie going to the theater with my daughter, my Padawan, and seeing that fire kind of in her eyes, that light and love of Star Wars. We had a good time. The movie plays it really safe. Kylo Ren, the idea, like his entire character idea is playing it safe as far as Star Wars. Rey is not like super, I think, grating and offensive in that movie. There are parts of her character that are insufferable, like her temper, the lady temper of modern feminist characters. She's just she's psychotic. In the Last Jedi, particularly, you see this when she attacks Luke with a stick and knocks him to the ground, clubs him over the head. She has problems. But The Force Awakens is fun. I actually will defend Han Solo's death at the hands of Kylo Ren. We Star Wars fans know about like Harrison Ford wanting Han Solo to die. He wanted to die in Return of the Jedi. Didn't get it because that doesn't sell action figures, apparently, which is probably true. But he got his wish with this movie. I think it was part of negotiations for him coming back and doing another one. He was going to die. How should he die? I would prefer Han Solo die in a sacrificial way, which he did. I think he knew what happened, knew what was going to happen when he walked out on that catwalk with Kylo Ren, Ben Solo. I think he knew what the outcome was going to be, and he was like accepting it. It was him no longer running away from responsibilities and running away from being a dad, his life. I take huge issue with him and Leia breaking up. There actually, in the end, there was no utility to it. There was no purpose. You could have had all the same outcomes. Han and Leia together with an estranged son, and then Han dies. There was literally no reason in terms of the broader narrative to do that and to stomp all over the romance from the original trilogy that I think means a lot to fans. It means a lot to me. I love the ending of Return of the Jedi, and just so much of it got undermined, I think, without cause. You can still have your black sheep child, school shooter boy, Ben Solo, which is essentially who that is, with having two parents together, married, still in love, with a child who has fallen and that they can no longer help. So that's the good, the bad, and the ugly of The Force Awakens. I also really like the lightsaber battle at the end. I think Rey versus Kylo is like a aggressively not choreographed fight. It's just a lot of like angry swinging at each other in the snow. And I guess again, this is like headcanon and sort of heart over mind, but my dream as a Star Wars fan in my duel to the death in the Star Wars universe that I want to be a part of, I always wanted it to be in the snow. Snow battle to me is perfect lightsaber fight. So The Force Awakens features my beloved snow battle dream. So for that reason, I just like it more. The Last Jedi is my number 9. It's not the bottom of the barrel for me. You might be wondering where Attack of the Clones is. The Last Jedi, we're going to talk a lot about this movie while I'm contributing to Bounding into Comics and getting to know everybody here in the audience. We're going to talk a lot about this movie. It was just on TNT the other night. I was staying in a hotel and it was playing on TNT, and I tried watching parts of it, and then I just had to switch back to watching Shark Tank. There's just so much cringe. However, what I'm going to say in its defense, are you ready for this? Is that Rian Johnson in The Last Jedi was an attempt to say something about Star Wars and about the Force, about the Jedi, and how we should think about this whole thing called Star Wars. I admire artistic effort like that, even if it comes across as disrespectful to the lore, to the fans. I admire an effort to say something. What J.J. Abrams represents to me is an artist who says nothing, who has nothing to add, literally nothing to add about what Star Wars means, what the Force is, how we should think about it. J.J. Abrams exists to give you what you want and give you candy and, nostalgia bait. The Force Awakens being nostalgia bait. The Rise of Skywalker, poorly done nostalgia bait. and I think a cowardly movie, like a movie that unnecessarily caves to blowback about The Last Jedi. Again, I don't think there's like rights or wrongs here. Like it's okay to not like The Last Jedi. It's totally fine. Um, you let the creators know, you let Disney know. But Disney should, like, in theory, believe enough in their story, believe in the story that they're telling to then stick with it. But they didn't. They didn't stick with it because they didn't believe in it. They were afraid, uncertain, and they didn't have a plan. And so when fans backlashed against that movie, for right or for wrong, they crank out The Rise of Skywalker, which I think is like a scared response. And I don't like that. I would rather you do something risky, mildly offensive, uh, that has a meaning, even if it's a bad meaning. So we'll discuss this a lot over the coming months and years. So Attack of the Clones is my number 10. Again, I think like the worst of the prequels. It looks bad. It's acted poorly. It's too long. The lightsaber battle in the end is not very gratifying. Dooku versus Anakin and Obi-Wan was not nearly as good as it should have been. It should have been so much better. And I just don't like it. And I also do not care for Yoda v. Dooku. It's not something that I enjoy watching. But of course, the Battle of Geonosis, the Colosseum, is just A-grade Star Wars, A+, truly. Really, really good times. Which brings me to the bottom of the barrel for me, which is Rise of Skywalker. So Rise of the Skywalker is just my absolute least favorite Star Wars movie for the reasons that I just described. I find that movie to be just so mind-numbingly empty. There was nothing to be said about what all of this story means to cap off the Skywalker saga. That was like your one job. Tell us a story about Star Wars, the Skywalker legacy, and the Force that means something. And instead, we got them bringing back Palpatine from the dead in the most, let's not even try to explain it way possible. No, that's again another one of those things that undermines Return of the Jedi in such a horrible way. Unforgivable. Bringing him back as some weird corpse hung on a hook. And like the battle between him and Rey and Kylo is like Dragon Ball Z. It's like Dragon Ball Z. It's just epic proportions, like end game kind of stuff. The lightning and the him shooting lightning at Rey and her pushing it back, and like again, it's like Kamehameha going back and forth. That's not Star Wars. That's not Star Wars. It's not. It's very bad. I am Stephen Kent. You have been listening to Skytalker on Bounding into Comics. There's going to be way more of this in the months to come. I'm super excited to be part of the family here. Going to be contributing again, focused on Star Wars, touching on Lucasfilm and Disney in other ways. Occasionally, I might veer into other fandoms and contribute to other aspects of the channel on different topics. But for the most part, Star Wars is my thing. You can find me on Bounding into Comics. Check out my articles, and do follow me on Twitter at Stephen Kent X. You can see my handle there. And my website is geekystoics.com. That's my Substack, where I write about philosophy and pop culture, mainly Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Marvel. It's a little self-help, little philosophy, stoicism. It's a good time. So it's a free newsletter. You should go on over there. It's geekystoics.com. I would love if you subscribe. And tell me your rankings. I want to hear your Star Wars rankings. Again, there are no right answers. And ignore the whole best versus favorite thing. Just tell me your Star Wars rankings, whatever they may be, head or heart. It doesn't matter. People get so defensive in this fandom. I have strong opinions about Star Wars. What I don't have strong opinions about is other people's opinions. So just let them fly. Tell me your rankings. Put them in the chat. Want to see them. Again, I'm Stephen Kent. This has been Sky Talker. See you again soon.